It won't come as a surprise to Houstonians to learn that our region and our city are among the most vulnerable in the country when it comes to environmental hazards and risks. We've almost certainly lived through a hurricane or derecho or ice storm. And so it's no surprise that we need to be thinking forward about how to be a more resilient, a stronger, a healthier city, and how to protect our environment from what will continue to grow in the future as more severe threats develop. And so today we're sitting down with some folks who've been doing exactly that work as they put together the first climate justice plan for Harris County. We're talking with one county official and one nonprofit leader who've both helped to put together this plan or implementing it all across the county now. And I'm delighted to get to say we talk through the plan. We also think about the future beyond what's coming up in the next few years to understand how Harris County is working to make us all safer and more weather wise for our future. I'm Weston Twardowski, the Associate Director of Rice's Center for Environmental Studies and Associate Director of Eco Studio in the Rice Sustainability Institute. And you're listening to Gulf Streams on KPFT Houston 90.1 FM, Galveston 89.5 FM, and Huntsville 89.7 FM, where we talk with leading experts and community leaders to better understand the environmental problems and potential solutions facing our community. A quick reminder that you can catch up on Gulf Streams anytime through our podcast, available on all major podcast platforms. If you enjoy the show, please like and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Lisa Lin is the director of Harris County's Office of Sustainability, and Andy Escobar is the campaigns manager at SEER. And so let's just maybe start there for folks who aren't super familiar with those things. I have a hunch folks can kind of guess what the Harris County Office of Sustainability might do. Maybe, Andy, if you want to start actually and walk us through SEER and your work in the community, because I think that may be less familiar for folks.
Absolutely. SEER stands for Coalition for Environment, Equity, and Resilience. And we're a coalition that was started in response to Hurricane Harvey. Some environmental organizations, some labor groups, housing advocates, and a whole bunch of others in between came together after Hurricane Harvey, after all the destruction, and realized that there was a real big need to break down the silos between the environmental, conservation, climate, and overall social justice groups in the Houston area. And so SEER was born as a way to bring everyone together into one space with the central guiding star of climate and environmental justice. And so our mission is to make the connections between pollution, place, and public health. And we're really excited to be, entering a new chapter as an organization. We just became a 501c3.
Congratulations. It's a big step.
And we're really focused on pushing towards real solutions, practical solutions for folks, and bringing together both public and private folks in this endeavor.
Terrific. And Lisa, I think folks can guess to some extent what the Harris County Office of Sustainability, I cannot get that out, but what it does. But can you just walk us through a little bit your role, and especially in the county government? And I know that you guys are actually relatively new and growing, so maybe you can talk through a little bit what that mission is.
Definitely. Yes. So I have been in this role for a little over 4 years now and helped start this office. Commissioner's Court created this back in 2021. I started this role in 2022, in January of 2022. And really, our focus is to deliver measurable sustainability, resiliency, environmental climate justice solutions to residents and Commissioner's Court and align with the priorities they have set forth, both in the strategic plan, but then also numerous climate action plans that we've adopted. One is the Climate Action Plan for Internal Operations, and then the latest one is our Climate Justice Plan, where we've been partnering with SEER for the last many years to move forward.
And that's exactly what we're here to talk about. So you just turned in your first annual report of the Climate Justice Plan. I know it took a couple of years to put together. There was a lot of groundwork done to put that together. So maybe we just start there. Well, actually, let's go back a little bit even further and say, what is climate justice? Just for folks who haven't heard this term, what is it and why does it matter to Harris County in particular?
Yeah, so I think there's many definitions, and I think whoever you talk to across the kind of landscape of folks that we've engaged with, it looks different, it feels different. I think one thing that we really wanted to make sure to stay true to the theme of climate justice is that when we were planning the document, that it centered around the needs, the true needs of frontline residents across Harris County. So for residents, who are living, near facilities that emit a lot of pollution. A lot of the climate justice work might look like air quality, water quality, soil health. For folks who might live in an urban heat island, area that has very few trees or kind of shade, maybe climate justice looks like more native trees and pavement that cools the environment. So we really wanted to make sure that this plan could be meaningful across the broad swath across Harris County, because there's so many different neighborhoods that are experiencing different types of climate issues, environmental justice issues. There's something for everyone in this plan.
Agreed. And, I think that climate justice is kind of a newer sort of buzzword that's kind of been popping around, and the way that I distinguish it from, for example, environmental justice, and this isn't, 100% across the board, but I view the environmental justice framework as, what we use to guide this work as our values, our principles, but climate justice is the action that we take to do right by all those injustices and those harms. And for me, it's just really personal. I grew up on a Superfund site in Northwest Houston, and my family still has unhealthy drinking water. And when we think about, the climate catastrophe and how much things are exacerbating what we already know is harmful, we need to come together and look at these issues in a holistic way. And that's what climate justice is. It's looking at every single aspect of our lived experiences and all of the stakeholders that play a role in making our world a better place for everyone and future generations, and both our human and non-human friends.
I think something that, and then thank you for those definitions, but I'd also say something that, is coming to mind as you're discussing this, especially Lisa, when you're talking about just the breadth of different concerns and challenges. I mean, Harris County, just shy of 2,000 square miles, multiple cities actually sit within Harris County. It's the third most populous county in the country. I mean, this is an incredibly diverse place, not just in terms of the demographics, but the geography. I mean, this is, we're almost the size of Delaware just as a county. And so some of those challenges really are going to look incredibly different when we think about neighborhood to neighborhood, what different communities are really going to need, what those different kinds of concerns on. And so I know one of the big things in developing this plan that you did was talk to a lot of community members, go out and meet with folks all over the county. So can you just talk a little bit about the development of this plan? I mean, I think you've kind of hit on where the impetus for it came from, but as you were designing it, as you were thinking across the county, how did this come together?
We started with values, which is pretty abnormal for a process like this. And we were very intentional of trying to do this a little bit different. We wanted to try something new. We wanted to be innovative because we know that for the average resident across Harris County, most of these, plans and policies aren't something that they're talking about, right? We're still spreading the good word and the gospel of the Harris County Climate Justice Plan. And please, share the good word, be proud. But at the end of the day, there has to be actions that go with those things. And so we wanted to look at our values, like what sort of world do you want to live in, and how does that match up with mine? And we both agree on safety. We both agree on prosperity. Wait, we all agree on these things actually. And so to go from that, we then created a framework. And people had so many robust ideas, and we allowed folks the permission to imagine 100 years from now, maybe even 1,000 years from now, which for so many people is a really difficult thing to do. And it provides the opportunity to be imaginative and to see the solutions to some of these really big things that we've been dealing with that feel insurmountable or feel like we can't do anything about. And so with that, we created the framework, and then we got an advisory collaborative. And that was also very representative of all the different communities and neighborhoods and demographics of Harris County, right? We are one of, and I would argue, the most diverse area in the country. And it's important that everyone plays a role in this work. And that's what came up in our early stages, is realizing that there's so much that actually goes beyond the scope of even the county of what folks want to see happen. But that doesn't mean that we can't acknowledge it and respect it and support it. So that's just a little bit of how we got started.
And I would also want to even highlight even the Sear and Harris County partnerships. I think that's actually really unique too, looking across the different planning processes that other municipalities have taken around climate planning. I feel like this is something that we're also kind of proving the model that having a community partnership with local government, working together is such an important thing to prove that is like this is the lasting kind of relationship that's needed to make climate work.
And tell me where that idea came from. I mean, why bring Sear into? I mean, I love the work of Sear. I'm not, but very much so. Like, I think to your point, this is a rarity that we see. So, how did that idea come about, and why was it important to you to bring in, a nonprofit organization in the area?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's probably two main reasons. I think one of them is I hearken back to a previous local government experience that I had. Also climate planning in the community. I was sitting in the local government role. And in that experience, even our advocates and our office sometimes we're at odds in just the planning process and what should be in the plan. And I know from that experience that we needed to build this plan off a foundational, trusting relationship that we could be authentic and be honest and address any type of issues as we were planning and co-develop and co-design this process. I think this is something that I'm now seeing more of across the country, but back, when we started this was still a pretty novel approach. I would say the second approach or second reason was really we identified this funding source that was, again, wanting to build this kind of three-party kind of partnership between a community organization, a local funder, and then a local government. And so that funding was from the Partners for Places kind of family of philanthropies. And so Hershey Foundation was our local funder. We reached out to Sear to see if they would be interested in kind of coming along this journey with us, because we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how long we would have funding, but we knew that this was something that was really important to make that a strong base. And then we were the local government partner. And so we were actually able to get funding from not only Hershey Foundation, but also something that's from a family of funders that's nationwide to move forward with this. So, and then I think from there, we were able to get additional funding from different sources to just make sure that we could do this plan justice with the support that was needed to bring in residents, stipends or whatnot, to make sure that people could participate authentically during our pre-planning meetings.
And so as you built out this plan, I mean, I can say there's, it was funny, we were chatting a little before we started recording, and one of the things we were talking about is, there's certain aspects of it that are very much on a kind of 5-year model. And as you have this first annual report, certainly thinking around what you've done and what's coming up in the next kind of year, next 3 years. But also, a lot of it goes well beyond that and is visioning, what do we actually want Harris County to look like, long from now. And as you put that together, there were kind of 5, pillar areas that formed in the plan. And so I have my notes here, and, we've got ecology, infrastructure, economy, community, and culture. And I think, ecology and infrastructure are probably the most familiar for folks as they think about what a climate justice plan might entail. I think in Houston, if you were to ask somebody on the street, climate, what does that mean in Houston? They're going to say like hot, floods too much, hurricanes scare me. And that might be the end of the list, but there's actually a great deal of hazards that we have beyond that and challenges that we're facing beyond that. But there's also, I think, really interestingly, a lot more to, I think it's one of the things that often gets left out in folks' thinking is the way that actually our climate and the risks that are inherent here really do impact our economy tremendously. And I want to get to thinking about community and culture, which I think are really pivotal as well. But first, maybe you just want to give us a little bit of a why these 5 areas? Well, how did this come to be and why are they significant for understanding how we're thinking about resilience and justice and ensuring safety for our community?
I think because we received so much input from folks, it was really important for us to really think about the broadness. And it took a while to get to sort of these 5 categories. And I think that is the innovativeness of this. Part of one of the goals for this plan, for me, I think to say, is developing a culture of care where everyone across Harris County, just inherently cares about one another, cares about each other's well-being, cares about each other's prosperity and thriving. We want to cultivate that world. And economy plays a big part of our lives, right? We are in the energy capital of the world. We are in the, medical capital of the world, right? We have a lot of economic opportunity that's going on here. And we know that, folks want to keep their families afloat, pay their bills, have safe housing, right? Like that is the norm. And we want to maintain that. And it's important for us to recognize, like you mentioned, right, the climate and the environment does impact our economy, right? Hurricane Harvey shut things down. And people's lives had to pause for a bit. And that was a really big shaking point for folks. But it reminds us how interconnected things are. And so, the more that we can see that our economy is connected and impacted by the natural world, the more that we can accommodate it.
Yeah, I would also I also reflect on when we were having the planning meetings. It was when the derecho and Hurricane Beryl had just hit and come through our region. So with the infrastructure parts, if part of the plan, you'll see a lot around just resilience with our grid and power delivery and that sort of thing, just hardening infrastructure and figuring out how to keep people energized, right, when we have these natural hazards come through. But tied to that, as Andy was mentioning, this culture of care, the meeting basic needs, there's still many residents across Harris County who don't have access to, rental assistance or food and that sort of thing. And so we wanted to make sure that we are addressing that along with the other things that help people thrive here in Harris County. In the economy section, which is also something that, we really tried to focus on this year, was the jobs piece of it. So from making sure that there's jobs for folks who want to get into weatherization or green jobs that help with advancing the clean economy. So is it solar training? Is it heat pump training? Is it an EV installer training? But there's also things like the circular economy. So are there ways to reduce single-use plastics, encourage composting and other types of kind of recycling for residents? So economy is a pretty broad category that encapsulates lots of different things that I think that are important to folks. And I think the weatherization piece, SEER has done some really great work around that, and that's something we highlighted this year in the annual report.
I think that's one of the things that, whenever we're talking about environmental challenges and the world we live in, you really, once you get into this work, you start to just realize how much it seeps into every fabric of life, and it's kind of inescapable, which I think is why it's so clear to me that, oh, of course, community and culture, I mean, these are things that are fundamentally shaped by the place we live and the environment around us. And I don't think that's as natural, if you're just, layperson on the street. But the deeper you get into it, the more you're like, right, actually, the place we live really shapes so much of every part of our life. Can you tell us a little about these weatherization efforts as Sear's been running?
Yeah, so weatherization is a solution to climate, and it's something that we believe everyone should have access to. It's an opportunity to basically retrofit, repair, do maintenance on residential homes is what we focused on, but it can be done on commercial properties as well. Really, all buildings should be weatherized. And it's a way for us to minimize how much energy is wasted in a home, basically, right? Like we're all like, familiar with the close the door, I have the AC running type of mentality. And yet there's so many parts of our homes that were built so long ago that are releasing so much of, that cool or warm air. And similarly to how Hurricane Beryl was a really big striking point, so was Winter Storm Uri. That was only a year or two before we started this process. And so that was fresh on people's minds too, of wanting to feel safe in their homes. And weatherization is a way for us to make that happen. We can seal up the cracks under the doors and the windows and even under the sink. It's adding insulation into the attic so that your home retains more. So it's a beneficial thing. Like everyone wins. People report that they're having better health effects. They're sleeping better. They have better quality of life. They're not having to think as much about their AC bills. And granted, some folks don't necessarily see exactly a save in money per se, right? Because they're so used to using less of their AC or whatever. Because they've conditioned themselves to that. And so when homes get weatherized, it allows them to use it in an appropriate, amount. And so maybe they're not necessarily saving money up front. In the long run, we do believe that that could be the case. But ultimately, it's better for the grid, right? The best energy saved is energy that isn't wasted. And weatherization is a way to expand jobs and make people's homes safer. And we believe that there's ways to make weatherization more accessible. One of the problems that we run into, though, is that a lot of homes have a lot of deferred maintenance, right? So because of all these storms, these hurricanes, a lot of these homes were built decades ago. They need a lot of work before they're even ready to be weatherized. And so that's something that we've confronted as well, too, is helping people get some repairs on their homes just so they can get the weatherization ready. So there's a lot of work to do, but we really want to champion weatherization as a climate change solution.
I think that's also really interesting hearing you talk through that, just because it does really make me think about this impetus that you started with of bringing a nonprofit into the process from the beginning, because, this is the kind of work that the county government really can't do house by house. It's not, how our government entities are set up. We can create grant programs and those kind of things sometimes, but that's just not really how government tends to actually engage with community, whereas having a nonprofit where that can entirely be under your auspice is just to really work with those communities who need that support, go in directly, provide much more direct assistance. I mean, that's a really, I think, valuable partnership to see how, two entities that are doing important work, but at very different levels and very different ways, can really complement each other, rather than seeing that as sometimes the kind of rivalries that can form between government and nonprofit entities in certain ways.
Yeah, I think one of the things to also really illuminate is the plan itself is not meant for Harris County alone to implement. It really is a co-implementation model where there's things that live in here that we also don't have the ability to do, either policy-wise or just like jurisdictional-wise. And so I think one of the things is it's things that it's really how do we coordinate together across all our networks of folks who are action oriented or doing stuff on the ground now, and how do we tell that story? And I think that's what we were trying to do with the annual report, highlighting both community led actions that have happened this last year as well as county led actions, because there's way more work in here than any one entity could even
And I
tackle.
think the root of that is trust, right? One of the big things that also came out is that folks are feeling a little skeptical of government, and we have to acknowledge that, and the relationships that folks have to civic engagement, and in having SEER be part of this, and it doesn't mean that SEER, everyone loves SEER, right? Like, we're in this in good faith. And we want to bring together as many folks as possible because we really believe that when we come together, we can make a change. And that's part of changing the culture as well, of the divisiveness, and recognizing that we do all have a role to play, both private, public, nonprofit, government, and that not any one entity can make it all happen. And it really is going to take all of us, all hands on deck. So this is the people's plan.
Since you bring up the word culture, I want to skip ahead a little because I think we've covered some of that economic side. I think certainly infrastructure folks can imagine, based on some of the things you've said, what some of these projects, both at a very localized level around weatherization, but also I'm sure we can, if you would like, we can get into more of some of those bigger long-term ideas about strengthening infrastructure. But I'd love to hear some about these other elements of community and culture, and I think you're hinting at some of that. But what does that mean in terms of thinking about climate and the way it impacts those things, and the way that these forces can actually really make us much more prepared for the world we're living in as it changes?
So the first action in the culture section that we tackled was something that was kind of had momentum building around it, and it was actually improving our repair culture here in Harris County. And we've actually been partnering with the Harris County Public Library. Andy has been a patron of our repair cafes at this point. And it's really kind of thinking through these items that we use on an everyday basis, clothing, appliances. How do we reduce our throwaway culture and really learn skills that, that can be utilized over and over again, and learn how to repair and kind of keep things out of our landfills. So I think that's a more tangible example of what our culture section is trying to kind of illustrate. I think beyond that, it's also like the arts and culture piece. Like, how can we lean into that and really tell the story of like how people can make a difference, one action, at their home, and how do we amplify that so that other people get inspired? And I think that's something that we're trying to do with our zine that was just released. It's very artful. There's local poets and artists who helped us co-create that booklet that we just launched at Commissioner's Court on the 16th of April. And it's something that's also leading with just messaging that I think is empowering and inspiring. And it's things that that climate justice doesn't have to be something that's this esoteric term that we don't know where to start. Like, you can start today. You can start at your home. You can start with just the little actions throughout your day of, choosing to grow your own fruit or vegetables, or choose public transportation, or volunteer with a community nonprofit that's doing good work in the region. So I think with our zine, that's what we're trying to kind of lead with the visuals, the imagery, and make sure that folks can feel that this is accessible work to them. And then I think for the other pieces of the culture is just there's other things like our community health workers and our public health department. How do we kind of leverage that network and help further their impact in the community? So our culture section is something that is pretty unique. And it's also trying to break down silos within county government, getting the information out about what we do, sharing the decision making of what's happening too. So it really touches on so many facets of just everyday life.
I think something that that jumps out to me in that as well, though, is certainly it's a great tangible example with the zine of, something really specific around how we communicate this, how we're showing, what's being accomplished. But it also hints to something broader, which is often in these conversations around both sustainability, but also just kind of resilience in general, a piece that really gets left out is the aesthetic. And that's really critical to people. People like to live in places that they feel like, reflects their values, reflects their taste, reflects, beauty in whatever sense that may be. We it's very easy to kind of look back and, pick on, say, the Army Corps, but, and look at the channelization of bayous and rivers across the country in the mid-century and watch, decades of folks trying to undo some of that work or just rethink it, even in places like, we can discuss, here we are with bayous, they're slow moving, how much channelization really helps is questionable. But we could look at, say, the LA River, which is really fast, floods really bad. You really actually need channelization there. And at the same time, there are ways of doing that where you still have park space and green space. And, Los Angeles County has spent about 40 years trying to undo some of the work that was done to just move the water as fast as possible one way. Now, of course, with water crises they're also having to really rethink how can we actually capture some of that water? Yeah. How can that be a value of, storing and protecting? And so I think, part of what excites me when I see things like community and culture as a pivotal part of this is, this kind of holistic thinking that's not just, how do we solve this problem in the fastest, quickest, most economical way, which might, be necessary. And it's not like everything always needs to be the most expensive option, but also, will this be a solution then that is embraced by community? Will it make them feel welcome where they're living? Will it bring them... Sorry?
Will it last?
Will it last? Exactly. Are we going to have to rethink it in 10 years? And so I think that's really encouraging to me.
I've heard before, culture eats policy for breakfast. And I think that that's really true, right? We can make all these plans, have all these ideas, and culture can put all of that into a change. And similarly, our environment, right? And our climate can do that. And I think with the culture piece too, that's really beautiful is that we want things to look nice. We deserve things that look nice. And we know that parks, people enjoy being out in nature, but they don't want to be out there if they can't have shade, right? And there's ways that we can really blend all these things together and be creative and intentional. And that's what we really want. We want a little bit more intention.
It's funny because as you were saying that, the first thing I was thinking of actually is, you take these spaces, and I think actually Houston is a really outstanding leader in this. If we look at our bayou system and see how we've really just reinvigorated that over the last 15 years or so, created remarkable park spaces, worked really diligently at that. And you can see communities where, if this was just a big piece of concrete sitting out, people would avoid it. They wouldn't want to be there. It wouldn't have any kind of draw. And instead, we make that an accessible space. We make it a resource. Not only does that, feed communities and, really make these places that people want to live or excited to be in, that goes back to the economy. It actually boosts value around that. It supports these local places. And so I think exactly to your point, these ideas feed across each other in really real ways. And so to put a little bit of tangibility on that, I know we just had the first annual report, and I know there were 12 early actions that you went through in that. So can you just give us a little taste of what are some of the things that have already been accomplished or that are, rolling out? And then maybe we'll talk through a little bit, what you're expecting to come out, because there's, I think you mentioned over the next 5 years, 70 actions you're planning on trying to at least get started. Some of them really go beyond 5 years as a time frame, but this really thinking across how do we execute this plan and make some of these changes reality where we live.
Yeah. So we're happy to say that we have at least accomplished one. We've completed one out of the first 12. Most of the other ones have significant progress. We're already kind of doing a lot of work underway to kind of build momentum there. But the one completed action is actually under the ecology section, which was launching a seed library at each of our Harris County Public Library branches. And so now any Harris County resident can go to any of those branches and get a packet of native grass seeds. Now we're trying to expand that offering, and we'll have vegetable seeds also. at the libraries too. But that was really something that we wanted to make sure if folks wanted to look at a more resilient landscape in their front yard, their backyard, look at native grasses that actually can hold water on site, have deeper roots, and make it spongier, that we wanted to be that kind of, we wanted to reduce that barrier to entry. So we're really excited to say that is complete and will be ongoing. We'll be supplying seeds. Those seeds will also be in our zines too. So if you find our zine out in the wild, you'll see a packet of those same native grass seeds that you can also plant. Some of the other ones in the ecology section revolve around clean energy is actually in the ecology section too. And so we've partnered with Solar United Neighbors on a Switch Together campaign last year. We'll be doing that again this year. So if folks are interested in adding rooftop solar battery, that they can opt into this group purchasing program and kind of lower the cost of that installation on their home. So that will be launched again for this spring in the next couple of weeks. So we're excited to kind of have that rolling again. Another one was, again, something that Andy was a part of was our community solar advisory group, kind of looking at ways to design our community solar program to really meet the needs of folks who are experiencing higher electricity bills, and how can they, again, opt into this program and realize a 20% savings on the utility bill. So understanding, what are the models out there, what are the neighborhoods we should start with, and that sort of thing. So we've already tackled many in the ecology section. From the infrastructure side, I think SEER has been doing a great job on the Resilience Hub work. I don't know if you want to, I'll pass it to Andy really quickly
please
for that.
So that's part of our culture change too, right? We want to create a culture where folks know, everyone knows what a Resilience Center is. Everyone knows what a Resilience Hub is. And I know that's not true. But essentially we want folks to be able to access a free resource where they can get their needs met, basically, right? We were talking about our basic needs. We're thinking about wellness, right? All the aspects of wellness. And a resilience center, because in Houston, we're so used to disaster response, that's where we started the idea of like, okay, well, we want a place where people can seek refuge when the power goes out that needs to be solar powered. And that was the impetus. But what we realized is that we need to think about not just the gloomy days, but the blue sky days. And that's what a resilience center is all about. It's cultivating a space where there's blue sky days and dark sky days, and there's programming there, resources that's free to the community, and it's determined by the community based off of what they need, right? Because we know every neighborhood has different things going on, different needs, different requirements. And so we're working in Fifth Ward with a partner, the Fifth Ward Missionary Baptist Church. They have a community center right behind their church called the Carl Walker Jr. Multipurpose Center. And so that's been our kind of satellite office and our home base in Northeast Houston. And we've been working with the center to get it established as a resilience hub and a resilience center. And part of that is to get the solar power so that folks can seek refuge there. But it's also providing financial wellness classes. We have a bank that we're partnering with that's teaching people about credit and opening a bank account. There's job readiness programs with the Texas Climate Jobs Project and apprenticeship readiness. And so there's small partnerships and programs that we're getting started there with the ideas that we would have many of these resilience centers across all over the county that people could access. And it's sort of also a way to build community, right? A third space, kind of like a library as well.
And from the county side, we're looking at the resilient power side of things. So we've been adding on-site solar, battery energy storage systems. Some community centers also have natural gas backup too. So we're looking at making sure that these centers can stay online, and hopefully we can share these best practices based on what SEER's been doing and what the county is doing, and really understand what's needed in each of these communities and advance this. Invents this effort. So, and then across some of the other ones, I think we mentioned like the weatherization. There's the jobs piece, kind of circling back to that. There's been this effort that's been funded by the J.P. Morgan Chase Foundation called the Resiliency Workforce Collaborative. So they've been bringing together different workforce partners and and folks in that ecosystem to really create opportunities for residents. We've been at the table to represent like the employer, like folks at the end of the pipeline. Where can we place these individuals? And we've been really interested, especially on the clean energy side of things, of as we launch our community solar program, are there jobs available? As we introduce more heat pump technology and just more energy efficient HVAC systems, are there kind of more opportunities for folks who are graduating or kind of coming through these trainings to be placed or have an apprenticeship at the county? So these are kind of more long-term things that I'm thinking of that would really help just give people the experience and the launch pad to kind of get to other types of jobs that they're interested in. So Goodwill Houston has actually launched a clean tech accelerator program here where they have that the EV charging, the heat pump training, the solar installation training all in one location at their Gessner Center. So we highlighted that in this report because we want to tell the good story of what they've been doing, investing in Houston, Harris County. And then some of the other things in our community section, the first one was actually just getting folks to know that Harris County has a 311 system.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks did not
Hot off
know
the
that.
press.
So we're just starting to kind of create some trial kind of social media campaigns to say like, hey, if you're in unincorporated Harris County, there is a 311 system that can take your calls or emails and make sure that they're routed to the right place at the county to address those concerns.
Which, I mean, it's critical work. It's one of those hard things where, I think especially in a city that, our population is so derived from people who are not from here. Internal migration, external, it is, we are a migrant city. And part of the reason we continue to grow so quickly is because so many new people come to Houston. And it means, I think it's a real challenge to really always be we have to keep educating folks as they come here about what are the resources, what is available to you. And it's not the 80s anymore. We can't just put an ad on TV. I think it's gotten much trickier to try to reach out, especially somewhere, as we've said, Houston's an incredibly diverse place. There's so many languages that are spoken. It's just a place that we really have to do a lot of work to really try to bring people to the table to say like, hey, here are resources that are available for you, and what are other ones we can be creating. I love you talking about a job training, professionalization training, partially because a little selfishly, I work with high schoolers a good bit and I work with young people. And I think that's, not exclusive to them, but certainly something they're very interested in is how can we develop skill sets for, the new economy. The economy is changing. So what are the kind of things that we need? I know that youth advising was a really key part of the development of this plan. Can you talk a little bit just about the role of youth in this, both in actually helping to develop the plan, but also some of that implementation?
Yeah, that was also innovative in this process. The advisory collaborative that we gathered was 15 members. 5 folks were selected by the Harris County commissioners and the judge. 5 folks were selected through SEER. We kind of did a whole process. And then the last 5 folks were youth. We wanted to make sure that the folks informing this plan were the folks that were going to inherit this plan and see it through, and have some of those voices be present. And so we had 5 young people from all corners of Harris County between the ages of, I want to say 14, I think was our youngest, or 11.
Maybe 14, 15, 16, somewhere
very,
around there.
very young, like all the way up until early college. And so having those young people there was just so foundational to, keeping it realistic and keeping it on the ground, right? It kept everyone on their toes as far as like, how are we going to make this accessible? How do we make this appealing to this new generation? That we're adults, right? Like, we need to bring those folks in and tell them that they have a seat at the table and that they have a right to be there. And so that was really exciting.
I love that you bring up that youth are the ones who are ultimately going to inherit, whatever comes from the implementation and fruition of initiatives like this. I would love to revisit that. You opened with that kind of conversation about Harris County in 100 years, Harris County in 1,000 years. I don't know that we need to go quite as far as 1,000 years right now, but I would love to hear, if this plan, you're implementing it at a great clip, things are moving forward. What is the Harris County that we can imagine as a result of this plan? What is your dream for Harris County as a more climate just place? And how can we hope that might come? If we were to hope that comes true, what would this place look like?
A place where we're proud to be Harris County residents, where we're proud to be Houstonians. I think that we do have a lot of that pride. We know that this is such a beautiful, unique place to raise our families. It's where I was raised. And we have the beautiful diversity of everyone that we welcome here. And the more that we can trust each other, that we got each other's back, that we all want the best for one another, that's what I would like to see. And that way, when those climate emergencies do occur, we're not sweating it. We know we got each other's back. We know where we can go when we need to charge our phone. We know we can talk to our neighbor and that they're going to receive us with open arms. That's what we want to cultivate. And also that folks recognize that everyone has a role to play. That's the future I want to see, where everyone does a little bit. Everyone does their part, the government, the private, the public, the people, organizations, businesses, because we're all in this together. We can't do this without everyone coming together. So I see a world of solidarity and good faith and trust.
Yeah, I echo Andy's, all of what Andy said. I would add that I think the other thing that I remember hearing a lot in the pre-planning kind of visioning was access to nature. Everyone's vision was kind of harkening back to just plants, trees, being able to hear the birds and see butterflies. I mean, even that kind of basic need of just being able to touch grass and go out and be a part of kind of this bigger ecosystem and understanding kind of our role in this in the web of life. So I would say like that too, just, there's going to be a huge parks focus this year with year 2 of implementation. So kind of tying in that story of how parks and green space really help people make sure that they can think clearly how they can live and thrive in a challenging environment that we live in, right? Because of all the natural hazards that we face. So definitely the people part, the community cohesion, knowing your neighbors, how do we support each other? How does government support, in times of disaster and uplift the good work that's happening on the ground? I think that's some of the things that we want to hear and understand. How can we do better as government and really serve the needs of those who've been facing these challenges over and over again? And I think there's, whenever we reach that, there's probably going to be more challenges to solve then, but I think we can definitely get there.
Yeah, progress doesn't stop. It's a continual
exactly
process. I mean, what a perfect place to ask, for folks who are listening, who are excited by this vision, who are excited by this work, who want to get involved. How can they get involved? What are things they can be doing to directly help make us a more resilient and safe and green and lush and engaged, proud Harris Countyan world?
The lowest hanging fruit, follow social media. I know most of us do engage with Instagram. The Office of County Administration posts a lot of the sustainability updates. And then for Sear Houston on Instagram, that's the easiest platform to receive updates, events, opportunities. And then if folks want to sign up and volunteer, they can reach out to me, Andy at searhouston.org. We'd love to welcome folks. And if you just want to nerd out and just get really excited about this stuff, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I mean, the SEER Coalition also, I mean, plugging into any of those nonprofits, we also had this mini grant initiative called the Sowing Equity Through Engagement and Development, or the SEED mini grant initiative. So we had 10 funded groups there. So any of those groups, you can find that list in the Climate Justice Plan annual report that's now live on our website. So there's so many ways to plug in, get engaged, get civically engaged. This is all of our plan.
It belongs to all of us.
To take on.
Well, it has been a delight getting to talk with both of you. I am excited to say we'll be highlighting some of these projects in the coming month, and so we'll be chatting hopefully more with both of you, as well as other folks who've been working on directly implementing this new plan. And then I look forward to doing another check-in at the end of next year and hearing about all the great progress that'll be made then. But Andy Escobar of SEER, Lisa Lin, Harris County Office of Sustainability, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's do it. All hands on deck.
That's our show for this week. If you have questions or ideas for what you'd like featured on Gulf Streams, leave a voicemail at 713-348-4081 or email us at westonT@rice.edu. A quick reminder that you can catch up on Gulf Streams anytime through our podcast, available on all major podcast platforms. If you enjoy the show, please like and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Gulf Streams is a co-production of KPFT Houston and Rice's Center for Environmental Studies and the Rice Sustainability Institute's Eco Studio. Produced by Weston Twardowski. Original music by Carter Dean. Research support provided by Sarah Tabrez and Antara Varma. Stay tuned for No Expectations of Marcus French, here on KPFT Houston 90.1 FM, Galveston 89.5 FM, and Huntsville 89.7 FM.